the NCHRP Snow and Ice Performance Measures Implementation Project. Deepak is a transportation expert with more than 20 years of experience helping agencies develop and integrate emerging mobility and safety technology. He leads a team focused on advancing transportation technology adoption in the United States and manages a portfolio of projects that revolve around integrating intelligent transportation systems for state and local agencies. He is a skilled facilitator and leads stakeholder engagements for projects around the country, including integrated corridor management, connected vehicle deployments, automated driving systems integration, mobility services, transportation systems management, and operations. Deepak, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeremy. Next slide. I'm going to spend about 5 to 7 minutes today highlighting some recent work we've done for NCHRP on snow and ice performance measures. For those of you who are part of the Road Weather stakeholder meeting, some of this material was presented. But what we're hoping to do today is to highlight 2 states and give them an opportunity and really spotlight some of the work that they've done as part of this project. The final report link is available through this QR code. Thank you to all the participating states. There are about 14 states that participated, and the NCHRP program officer was Patrick Zielinski. So thanks to all of them. Next slide. Okay, the objective of this project was to really advance this notion of snow and ice performance measurement as an important storytelling and management tool that you have within your agency. One of the main lessons I took away is winter maintenance is an incredibly difficult job that many of us do on a daily basis, and with very tight budgets, balancing safety, environmental sustainability, and mobility. And performance measures really are a way to tell our story. And the goal of this workshop was to help state DOTs think through the data that they have, how do they organize it, and what sort of measures really help them with their operations and decision making. Next slide. The work was based on an NCHRP 889, that research report's available. It presents a core set of measures, but it's more than an individual measure. It's more about how to develop a performance framework given the data sets that you have, the objectives you're trying to manage to, and then how do you use those performance measures for decision making. A key point in the report is not all agencies need to have the same performance measure. It depends on the way the agency is structured. It depends on the agency's objectives around winter maintenance and also their practices. So the goal of the report was to show that different agency types across the country can still start on the process of snow and ice performance measurement. Next slide. The process for snow and ice performance measurement was really around 10 steps. One is to starting from reviewing emissions and goals, all the way to integrating into decision making, setting targets, and identifying and evaluating the whole performance measure process and improving it continuously. So these 10 steps are described in about 4 or 5 chapters in the guidebook. So if you haven't looked at that report lately, the NCHRP 889 report gets into a lot of details around what is happening around the country, around performance measurement, and how to sort of organize them into these 10 steps. Next slide. So there's no single measure that describes snow and ice performance measurement. Not everything that you say is performance is fully controlled just by your response. So there could be aspects in an agency's response that's outside your immediate control. Starting the process is the most important step. And then some level of subjectivity in performance measurements cannot be avoided. So this perspective was what we took into this workshop, recognizing that we all start from a different place. Some of the agencies have a long-standing history of collecting and measuring performance. Some are just looking at data sets and starting to figure out what they need to do. How do you get started? And the goal of the implementation project was to help agencies kind of take those first steps in the performance measurement process. Next slide. So there were 6 states in the first phase, mostly in the AASHTO Region 1, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, and Maryland. And in phase 2, we added several other states, including some states in the West that have more of snow and ice control things only in parts of the state like Arizona. So you get a lot of snow in the northern parts of the state, but so their processes are very good in like certain areas of the state, but they don't have to worry about snow and ice, but they have to worry about non-winter weather in other parts of the state. So we had all these states work together, work over a period of essentially a year with a winter in between, and start looking at approaches to collect data and report on performance. Next slide. So just a few quick themes, and then I'll turn it over to the two state presenters who worked with us on the project. Next theme. Essentially, three performance measures were a priority for all agencies. Of course, they all set it a little bit differently, but meeting the recovery criteria set by the agency. How quickly do you recover from an event was one thing that really bubbled up to the top as something that all of us agree is important. There was a second aspect about what is the level of service you want to maintain during an event. So is there a certain level of friction that you would not let the roads get below, or is there a certain level of speeds that you're trying to maintain? That was a little harder, but it's still, there seems to be especially some new capabilities emerging on that. And the third really was winter maintenance also needs to be conscious of environmental stewardship, largely in the amount of salt that's being used. One of the good things about that last measure, environmental stewardship, is a lot of agencies already do a great job in collecting data about salt use and salt and their efficiency of salt use. They're part of agency culture and reporting already. One of the interesting things over this project was the keenness and the availability and really sort of the interest to explore more speed and reliability based measures. A lot of the agencies were excited about the use of operations data, and I use the word operations data in quotes, really sort of getting data from third-party providers, be it TomToms, INRIX here, and Redis, wherever you have data from probes that is useful to assess basically the speed profiles along segments. And then everybody noted that its performance measures are different for a maintenance supervisor, they're different for a maintenance garage, they're different for a DOT secretary, and they're different for the traveling public and the citizenry. So there's not one measure and one way of telling that story. You need to be able to have more of a dashboard-based approach, and you'll hear from that from Missouri on how they went about that in a little bit. The last point is when we initially started this project, there was this almost an implicit fear that this was some way punitive, that these measures could be seen as something that we are doing wrong, or be used in some way to kind of force people into additional activity or in uncomfortable situations. What ended up happening was, in most cases, measures became more of an indicator, not an audit. They were useful for everybody involved, and it was useful to know that fear kind of went away, and it was more about, hey, I didn't know we did this, and in fact, in many cases, what the agencies were really able to report was really how much they do and how much effort it takes to keep the roads going during a winter event. The one other point was, in a year, you will see a data point. It's going to take time for a performance measure to be truly useful in decision making. There's going to be variations between the years. It's going to take a little while for trends to really start showing up and then decisions made on that. One of the things that all agencies noted was there's a lot of noise between year to year and event to event. So it takes a little bit of while for trends to really emerge and you start making decisions on that. Next slide. And the staff availability was critical. Consistency was another key thing. Understanding storm severity, and you'll hear something from Tina today. And then really sort of making these performance measurement more automated, having more of a workflow between your various data sets and your systems to really minimize the level of effort involved for somebody with a spreadsheet to generate performance measurement was something that really stood out. Agencies that do more have a way of moving data geospatially between systems and into dashboards, as opposed to relying on a data analyst with a spreadsheet to report that. So that's one of the main messages that we want to leave with. Next slide. The value of this implementation project is the work across the states. They all worked with each other. They built off each other. They fed off each other's work, including like, oh, we could do that in our state. An example of that was the work that Minnesota and North Dakota leveraged. Minnesota was doing something with liquid to salt ratio. North Dakota was able to use it. And so that collaboration between peer agencies through this implementation project was pretty helpful. We also noticed several common issues that could be carried through from this project into other pool funds like Clear Roads and Aurora as well. Slide. So today we're going to hear from two state DOTs that really did some amazing work as part of this implementation project. And some of this work was even preceded this implementation project and we just sort of tagged along for the ride. The two states we're going to hear from was Iowa, a state that had a lot of information, had a long-standing approach to sort of snow and ice performance measurement and dashboarding, but really they wanted to think about using performance measures not as a reactive manner, but can we use it to actually plan and forecast and get better at prepping for events? So Tina will talk about her work in there. And Missouri, Paul and Professor Yao will talk about how they combined different sources of data in bringing in crashes, mobility, cost, and the geospatial data into performance measurement. And it really answers sort of what, in my opinion, is one of the holy grails. What would have happened compared to like the do nothing or the baseline? So really, both these presentations were very exciting. We were very grateful to have both Iowa and Missouri participate in this effort. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tina.